Hello, we continue on the News Channel. I'm Lou Waters.
And I'm Raynelda Muse.
President Carter left Camp David this afternoon and headed for Fort Wayne, Indiana, to visit wounded civil rights leader Vernon Jordan. Mr. Carter was to have visited Jordan on Friday, but canceled that trip at the last minute. Jordan's condition improved overnight, which is apparently why Mr. Carter chose today for the visit. We have our cable news cameras set up outside the White House. This is a live picture, and when the president returns to Washington, and he's expected momentarily, we'll have a live report.
As Lou just said, President Carter flew to Fort Wayne to visit Vernon Jordan. Before going to the hospital, the president met with local officials and FBI agents. Earlier, there were published reports that the Fort Wayne police and the FBI disagreed on how many shots were fired at Jordan. The president stressed the point that the local officials and the FBI were working well together.
I've also had a chance to meet with the mayor, with the police officials from the local government, and with the director of the FBI regional headquarters here in Fort Bend. And I think it's very good to point out that we have excellent cooperation, and that they are getting along well with each other. The local officials are very grateful that the FBI is involved in the investigation of the case, and I'm not going to comment on the progress of the investigation except to point out to you that there is nothing in their relationship except one of mutual appreciation and the very closest possible cooperation.
Mr. Carter said he visited Jordan briefly and he was in good spirits. The president said he told Jordan to be sure to follow doctor's orders.
President Carter invited two cable news correspondents to the White House this weekend, Daniel Schorr and George Watson. Among the topics discussed, Senator Edward Kennedy's challenge.
Are you expecting Senator Kennedy to withdraw?
No, I think that's a decision that must be made by him, when to withdraw. If he decides to go all the way through the convention before he formally withdraws, that is part of our process, and we can accommodate that.
You can accept that?
Of course. I would not try to create any obstacle to Senator Kennedy's seeking or achieving the nomination in 1984. I don't know who will run, don't know if he has any ambitions beyond 1980. So that would be just a conjectural thing. My hope is that the Democrats will choose someone in 1984 to carry on the programs that we will have established by then. But I think I would rather not comment on who those candidates might be.
But you would not push a candidate of your own for 1984, like Vice President Mondale, for example?
I would have to wait till later to make a judgment like that. That's when the campaign for 80 is over, then I'll answer your question.
You can see the entire interview with President Carter immediately following this broadcast. Senator Kennedy appeared on NBC's Meet the Press today. He was asked whether it really makes a difference who the president is.
One of the things that I have found in traveling this country for 7 months continuously is that many American people really are beginning to believe that no one can make a difference, no matter who we elect as President of the United States. And I think Mr. Carter, when he talked in his speech last summer about the malaise of the spirit of the American people, and when he constantly expresses, whether it is in the State of his Union speech, that a president really can't make a difference, and makes that kind of statement and a comment, that reinforces the concept, which is abroad in this land, that individuals can't make a difference and a president can't make a difference. I find that completely alien to everything I believe as an individual and everything that I believe as a Democrat. I think Franklin Roosevelt made a difference, Harry Truman made a difference, John Kennedy made a difference. And when I was in the well, when President Johnson said, "We shall overcome," and those words coming from a president of the United States sent a ripple across this country that we were no longer going to tolerate discrimination and bigotry in this nation, and he made a difference.
Yankee baseball star Reggie Jackson got in an argument over a parking space on New York's fashionable Upper East Side early this morning and allegedly had 3 shots fired at him. Angel Vieira has been charged with attempted murder. Jackson says he hopes the media doesn't make a big deal out of the fracas, but he says he was scared when he heard those gunshots.
A man apparently despondent over family problems vented his frustration on 3 unsuspecting passengers on an Amtrak train last night. It happened on the Washington to Boston route. A woman passenger and an Amtrak policeman were shot and critically wounded. Another train employee was shot in the hip. Police were alerted and the gunman was arrested when the train arrived in New London, Connecticut. The suspect has been charged with attempted murder.
A head-on car crash near Seminole, Texas has left 6 people dead. A policeman says the crash was the worst he's ever seen. He says both cars were ripped apart by the impact, and investigators are still trying to identify 4 of the bodies. All the dead were in the same car. Police say they were going down a highway when another car, moving against traffic, slammed into their car. The driver of the second car suffered only minor injuries.
The Mount St. Helens volcano is having its first quiet day in 3 weeks. It erupted May 18th with a force equal to an atomic bomb blast. 35 people are known dead. Dozens of others are missing. Officials say chances of finding any survivors now are slim. But geologists say a red lava dome inside the crater reduces the chances of further heavy ash eruptions. In nearby towns, the ash from earlier eruptions is still on the ground. Residents can do little to get rid of it. The fumes are still in the air, and many people wear surgical masks to filter the air and protect their lungs.
Nearly 4 years ago, Texas multimillionaire Cullen Davis was charged with killing 2 people and wounding his estranged wife at his Fort Worth mansion. A jury rendered a not guilty verdict. 2 years later, Cullen Davis was charged with trying to hire a killer to murder the judge in his divorce case. Again, Davis acquitted on the charges. Now Davis has made the news again. He and his family have announced they've accepted Christ and belong to a church in Euless, Texas. CNN's James Allen Miklashevsky reports.
Well, I went to church my young life, all of it in fact, and I dropped out from going to church probably about the time I graduated from high school and started to college. And just recently I decided to change that direction again and come back to the church.
Just a few months ago, you'd be likely to find millionaire Cullen Davis most anywhere on a Sunday morning but here. Now he, his new wife Karen, and her 2 sons devote every Sunday to worship and Bible studies at the First Baptist Church in Euless. His conversion to Christ came at the hands of evangelist James Robinson, who asked the congregation to begin praying for Davis as long as a year ago. But Robinson refuses to take credit.
I don't feel personally responsible. I am simply an instrument in God's hand to be used. And Cullen Davis is another person. He's no more important in God's sight than the little assistant that also accepted Christ, a college girl. He has an opportunity through visibility and through personal blessings that he's had in his life to perhaps affect many people with his life.
Robinson feels Davis has the ability to influence others towards Christianity, and after first refusing this interview, Davis yielded to his newfound religious calling.
After reflecting on that decision during the church services here, I thought I would change my mind and come do this interview because of the belief that I now have that Christians should get out of the closet, let people know that they're Christians.
Davis has been accepted by the congregation here not as a rich man who spent much of the past 4 years in jail, but as another Christian who has found his way with Christ.
I'm very happy with myself at the present time, and I hope to do everything I can to help the church and to help James Robinson and his ministry.
James Allen Miklashevsky, Cable News Network, Euless, Texas.
Coming up on the news channel, an oil bomb explodes in London. Some Key West residents say the Cuban refugees are keeping tourists away. And a look at the latest weather with Flip Spiceland. Stay with us.
Do you know me? I ran for Vice President of the United States in '64, so I shouldn't have trouble charging a meal, should I? Well, I do. That's why I carry an American Express card. I use it in stores, restaurants, airlines, and hotels all over the world. In Tokyo, Paris, and in upstate New York. Why, with this, they treat me as though I'd won.
To apply for a card, call 800-528-8000.
The American Express card. Don't leave home without it.
There are many medications for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. Which one is right for you? For years, Maalox has been recommended most by doctors. Now, the antacid ingredients in here, plus an extra ingredient, are in Maalox Plus tablets. Really pleasant tasting and effective. And Maalox Plus tablets also come in this handy pocket pack that keeps them fresh and sanitary. Maalox Plus for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. But don't just take my word for it. Try Maalox Plus tablets. You'll find you can't do better.
Clinton, Colorado. The sun hammers your eyes to a tight squint and cracks your throat with a dry, parched-out thirst. But one thing washes it clean. Nestea.
All over. Nestea tastes good all over. All over. Nestea tastes good all over.
No sugar, no bubbles, no additives. Just clean, light, pure tea.
Whether you drive a big car or a small car, if you aren't getting the gas mileage you should, maybe your car is having foot trouble. Remember, fuel economy is measured by the foot as well as the mile. When you step on the gas, step lightly, as if there were an egg under your foot. For a free booklet on more ways to save gas, write MVMA, Post Office Box 9009, Northeast Station, Detroit, Michigan, 48202.
Here's a quick glance at the headlines to the minute. President Carter warns Iran not to try the American hostages as spies for the first time in several weeks. Mount St. Helens is quiet today. Saudi Arabia may be raising the price of oil again. The authoritative Lundberg letter says the oil glut may produce gas wars in the U.S. again. Coming up, a report from Key West on the Cuban refugees, and Flip Spiceland standing by with a weather outlook. Now back to Reynalda and Lou. In the Florida Straits, rough seas and high winds kept Cuban refugees out of their boats today. CNN's Mike Betcher is in Key West. He says the port is quiet. For more on the story, let's go live to Key West and Mike Betcher.
Cuban annex at Key West Harbor is the most quiet it has been since the boat lift began 1 month ago. But military officials here estimate that between 250 and 300 boats still remain in Muriel Harbor in Havana, Cuba.
We're having a little bit of problem with the audio portion of that. We'll try and correct that and get back to Mike in Key West. Reynalda?
America isn't the only country where people are unemployed. Dennis McIntosh takes a look now at the job situation in Peking.
Private Osvaldo Cepero is one of several hundred Marines sent here to aid the Freedom Flotilla. But he is different from the others. In 1966, Private Cepero came to this country as a 5-year-old refugee from Cuba. He views the Freedom Flotilla from two perspectives, that of a Marine and of a Cuban American.
Like I said, I'm Cuban born. I lived in the United States 15 years of my life. I'm only 20 years old, but I have a special feeling for these people because I feel like I have a bigger demand to help them, being as I am the same nationality. And not to take nothing away from here, but I feel good about helping them just, because of the fact that they're my own people, you see.
Private Osvaldo Cepero says he looks forward to the time when he can return to a liberated Cuba.
If it was liberated, I would. I really would like to. I mean, maybe not to stay, because like I said, I've been here most of my life, and I like it here. And I'm settled down. I mean, my family's settled down here. But I would like to visit, my homeland someday, and I hope pretty soon.
Mike Betcher, Cable News Network, Key West.
Saudi Arabia, the world's leading oil exporter, is reportedly working on a plan to restore pricing unity within OPEC. Now, to do it, the Saudis may boost their oil prices by $4 a barrel and cut back on production, but only if other oil producers freeze their prices for the rest of 1980. A time-release bomb exploded and damaged one of London's most expensive shopping streets this morning. Scotland Yard says there's no clear motive, but the explosion may have been tied to Iranian revenge. Here's more from Paul Tilsley.
The bomb was left here in the doorway of the company's offices. The device had a delayed action timing mechanism. It was quite unlike anything Scotland Yard's terrorist squad has seen recently. The explosion shattered windows and ruined displays over a long stretch of Britain's most exclusive shopping street. The bomb went off at 1:30 this morning, and detectives are calling on Saturday night revelers for help.
We're appealing for any witnesses who were in this area during the late last evening and in the early hours to come forward and speak to us in case they got useful information as to who was loitering in front of the premises.
No one's claimed responsibility yet. As work began on clearing up the damage, only one motive was being put forward by London's Arab community. An attempt was made to assassinate Iranian Foreign Minister Sadek Ghozbadeh when he was in Kuwait exactly a month ago. And this could have been a reprisal. Paul Tilsley, ITN, New Bond Street, London.
The Soviets appear to be more and more concerned about their energy resources. A front-page story in Pravda condemns the Russian oil refining industry for what it called bureaucratic paper shuffling and inefficient mismanagement. The article accused the industry of lowering its production goals during the early stages of a yearly plan so as to appear to have exceeded them later. Pravda said the remedy is to improve discipline and increase the party's voice in the industry. Storms ripped across parts of the country's midsection last night. Several tornadoes touched down in central Illinois, destroying property and injuring several people. In Nebraska, it was heavy rain that caused problems. The rain and hail washed out fields and damaged crops, but there were no reports of injuries. Now weatherman Flip Spiceland is here to tell us more about those storms and the rest of the country's weather. Flip?
Oh, that is right, Raynelda. The storms moved out of Nebraska and into the Illinois area. You know, they say nothing is so rare as a day in June. Well, severe weather was anything but rare today. Let's take a look at our satellite picture, and you'll see that severe weather activity. It was right in here in the midwestern section of the country, and it is moving on to the east. Now, this cloud cover that you see here in northern Missouri and southern Iowa moved into Illinois early today, and that touched off some more severe weather. As a matter of fact, tornadoes were reported in sections of Illinois today. In the towns of Tuscola, Illinois, there were tornadoes. In the towns of Villa Park, there were tornadoes. And in Speedway, Indiana, that's the home of the Indianapolis 500, just outside of Indianapolis, they also reported a tornado today. All of this tornado activity is associated with this low-pressure center and warm front and cold front. The warm front delineates very warm, moist air coming from the south as a low-pressure disturbance and associated cold front moves through. Thunderstorm activity will continue throughout that section of the country tonight. In addition to the tornadoes, there was also some wind damage in Macon County, Illinois, the northern part of the county. A tree fell on a house, did some damage there. We have no injuries to report, however. And just northeast of St. Louis, Missouri, in Alton, Illinois, they reported golf ball-size hail. Now, it is the first day of June, but winter is still with us. There's a cold front approaching from the Pacific Northwest. This one started up in the Gulf of Alaska, and it's touching off some bad weather up there. Actually, not that bad, just showery activity right now. But as this moves across the Rockies, there is a winter storm watch in effect for the eastern slopes of the Rockies tonight and tomorrow. So when overnight low temperatures drop down to around the 30-degree mark, they could see some snow on the eastern slopes of the Rockies. Down into California, things were beautiful today, a nice sunny day. However, this approaching cold front could touch off a little bit of drizzle in the San Francisco Bay Area tomorrow. So, in the forecast, for our viewers in the Santa Clara Valley, in the city of San Jose, California, you can expect a chance of drizzle early in the morning, and then a sunny afternoon with a high around 78 degrees. If you're watching in San Diego, California, you can expect a mostly cloudy day with only partial clearing late in the day. You should see a high temperature around 75. And back into the Midwest, in the windy city of Chicago, Illinois, partly cloudy skies tomorrow, and late in the day, you're still going to be plagued with a chance of a thunderstorm. Will be a little bit cooler, high temperature tomorrow only of 82 degrees, and humidity should begin to drop a little bit too. That's the weather picture up to the minute. Now back over to Lou.
Thank you, Flip. This just in, rioting and violence have broken out at the Fort Chaffee processing center where thousands of Cuban refugees are living. About 1,000 Cubans have destroyed barricades and tried for the third time in 2 days to break out of that camp. There have been reports of gunfire, and one refugee says a fellow Cuban has been shot. At least one reporter covering the situation was attacked by the crowd. A spokesman for the government says no one has escaped from the camp. We'll keep you posted. Farmers are losing money this season, but consumers are getting a break on some meat prices.
The Corn Belt has experienced the best planting conditions in years. A mild winter allowed farmers to get into the fields early this year, and most corn and soybeans were planted ahead of schedule. In fact, 60 miles west of Chicago in DeKalb County, the corn is already breaking ground. Despite the potential for bumper crops, it doesn't appear to be a good year for DeKalb County farmer Tom Fenstermaker. Fenstermaker raises hogs. Because there's a glut of pork on the market, he's losing about $14.50 for every hog he takes to market.
We aren't now, and I'm afraid we're not going to be at even break-even prices on our products, our corn and our soybeans and our hogs. So.
But Fenstermaker's loss is the consumer's gain. He says pork is now one of the best buys in the supermarket.
Good time to fill the freezer, I would say. If I was a consumer not involved in agriculture, I certainly would.
Just down the road from Fenstermaker, farmer Ray Larson is also facing a tough year. He says the sagging economy has cut consumer demand for beef. He's losing $45 to $80 for every steer he ships to market.
It's not going to be a big money-making year. We realize that. You just hope that you can survive this year and be around to come back again.
In response to what they consider to be low prices, hog and cattle raisers say they're cutting back drastically on their herds this year. While meat prices favor consumers right now, a shrinking supply of hogs and cattle means higher consumer prices later on. Richard Blome, Cable News Network, in DeKalb County, Illinois.
Coming up on the news channel, the latest in what's happening in Washington from CNN's Bernard Shaw, and a review of The Empire Strikes Back. Those stories and more as the news continues. Stay with us.
Energy. A problem affecting everyone. The WTBS Energy and the Way We Live series attempted to answer some of the energy questions we all face in 3 two-hour programs. Because of the series' importance, WTBS will present 6 one-hour shows comprised of the best from the WTBS Energy series. It's our attempt to face some important questions. It's important television. That's why it's on the Superstation.
How many cold tablets do you take a day? 2?
More.
4?
More.
6?
Yes, 6.
A day? And then more at night? Why?
They're new?
Ever try Contact?
No.
Watch. One Contact helps relieve your congestion for up to 12 hours without the aspirin substitute and cough suppressant in these. Just one more Contact helps you all night while you sleep.
You're the guys on TV.
Give your cold to Contact.
It has a lot of headroom. I can feel right here.
We're eavesdropping with hidden cameras as a big car owner test drives the new Aspen.
I would imagine this car gets pretty darn good gas mileage out of this 6-cylinder engines.
For under $5,200, the Aspen has 6-passenger room automatic transmission, power steering, white walls, and more.
I could buy 3 of these for what I paid for my Cadillac.
Come to the Dodge Celebration Sale. Get a $300 rebate on specially tagged Aspens.
It's time for another miracle. It's time to cure diabetes. You can make this miracle happen by supporting your American Diabetes Association.
Here's what's happening in the news right now. We have just learned rioting has broken out at the Fort Chaffee Cuban Refugee Relocation Center in Arkansas. We understand about 1,000 Cuban refugees have broken out in rioting there. Some shots have reported to have been fired. We're checking into the situation. We'll have more on that momentarily. Border fighting between Iraq and Iran kills 80 Iraqi troops, according to Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Begin puts off a cabinet crisis today by filling the post of defense minister himself. Tornadoes and strong winds ripped through central Illinois, injuring several people today. President Carter visits a recovering Vernon Jordan at the Fort Wayne, Indiana hospital. Coming up, a live report from Washington and a review of the Star Wars sequel, The Empire Strikes Back.
Now for the latest on what's happening in our nation's capital, here's CNN's Bernard Shaw.
Air Force General David Jones, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, says he has no apologies to make to anybody for his record. In a Washington Post interview today, Jones claims partial credit for a rise in defense spending and President Carter's decision to keep troops in South Korea. Jones says the United States needs a new strategic bomber, and he regrets President Carter's decision to kill the B-1 program. The general has been reappointed to a new 2-year term by the president, but faces opposition at Senate confirmation hearings this month. Since mid-March, 1,800 Marines have been on station in the Arabian Sea because of the crises in Iran and Afghanistan. Now the Pentagon says they're coming home. Correspondent Dave Browdy has a report.
The Marines are coming home from the Indian Ocean, mostly because there's little for them to do there right now. They were ordered into the area in the middle of February, at the height of the post-Afghanistan invasion tension. They've been there ever since on board 4 amphibious ships, with only 2 port calls in the entire 4.5 months. Even after the Marines come home, the United States will still have some 25 ships in the Indian Ocean. The Soviet Union will have approximately the same number. But as tensions have seemingly cooled, Pentagon planners no longer feel it necessary to keep the Marines on standby in the Indian Ocean. Though as part of their withdrawal announcement, a spokesman here said the Marines can be ordered back into the area at any time if they are needed. And in fact, a buildup of U.S. forces in the Indian Ocean is expected later this month. 7 ships are to leave the United States carrying cargo to staff an entire Marine amphibious brigade. I'm Dave Browdy, the Pentagon Cable News Network.
Ronald Reagan and wife Nancy are thinking about renting a house designed and built by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. According to today's Washington Post, the Reagans are deciding whether to move into the house in a 46-acre estate in the Virginia Hunt Country near Middleburg. Reagan is moving his national campaign headquarters from Los Angeles to Arlington, Virginia, to be close to Washington, and the Reagans want a house nearby. And that's the latest from our Cable News Bureau in Washington.
A diplomat's wife has found out the hard way what many New Yorkers already know: never open your door to strangers. The wife of a Ghanaian attaché to the UN told her doorman that it was okay to send up the 2 men who had flowers to deliver to her, but it was a mistake. When she opened the door, the men showed weapons and began to beat her. They left only after she showed them where her jewelry was kept. The woman has since recovered from her injuries, but she and her children are now afraid to stay in their Manhattan apartment. Her husband has another year to complete of his UN assignment.
Faces in the news today. Anyone who thinks show business is a matter of making big bucks the easy way should really confer with Patty Duke Aston and Dave Burney. They've just finished filming Time Life's new telefeature, Mom, the Wolfman, and Me. One scene involved a 60-second bicycle sequence, but they had a little trouble getting it just right. Before the scene was in the can, they'd pedaled a total of 200 miles. Mel Brooks is at it again. Mel conquered the Wild West with Blazing Saddles and followed up with Silent Movie, but he's not satisfied. In his newest feature, soon to be before the cameras in Hollywood, he'll co-star with Richard Pryor, Dom DeLuise, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Shecky Green, and Madeline Kahn. The new title, Mel Brooks, History of the World, Part 1. Gong Show creator Chuck Barris has been named this year's Grand Gobbler by the National Organization for Women. The group says he was chosen on the grounds he's consistently demeaned women and shown overall lack of good taste. His award, a live turkey, will be accompanied by a note reading, "Chuck, included with this turkey are instructions on how to stuff it."
Lou, people are standing in line to see the sequel to Star Wars, but CNN's movie critic thinks The Empire Strikes Back can't match the original. Here's Fred Saxon.
Echo Station 5-7, we're on our way.
Those huge contraptions are death-dealing machines of the Empire and part of their aggression in the film called The Empire Strikes Back. The Great American Cereal is not a breakfast food, but something that you get hooked on at the theater. First with Star Wars, and then second with The Empire. But if Star Wars was a 10, Empire Strikes Back is only an 8.5. Why? Because this sequel to the biggest film of all time has a real reputation to live up to, and even with the addition of some new characters, like the lovable Yoda. He's an authority on the proper use of the Force, and Billy D. Williams, he's a rogue who gets duped by the bad guys. Even with these additions, the ending of Empire and the implied invitation to see the next sequel comes too soon. Not that the picture is short, because it's not. But the ending, which leaves a number of questions unanswered, seems to approach with almost the speed of light.
Luke! Luke, go to the trap! The trap!
Basically, it's the story of good against evil. Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo are all in good health, but just a little older. Darth Vader is still around, and this time he offers a few surprises and a shocking statement of who he really is. But we'll have to wait till next time to see if he's telling the truth and what are the consequences, or if Darth is just creating a farce about the Force. In Hollywood, I'm Fred Saxon, Cable News Network.
And coming up on the news channel, civil rights leader Vernon Jordan may soon be released from the intensive care unit. 9 states gearing up for Tuesday's presidential primaries, and a live report from CNN in New York. Stay with us.
Hello there, Bill Cosby, with a few family pictures. Whoa, wait, don't leave yet. Their pictures of one of the biggest families in America. All the Red Cross volunteers who help millions of people. You know, most people think of Red Cross as the people who help after a tornado or a hurricane, or in many places as the people who collect the blood. But Red Cross does so much more. They help people relocate after fires. They help veterans in hospitals and help veterans realize their full benefits. They help older citizens with all those little problems of life. They teach kids, maybe yours, to swim. They teach people to save lives, maybe yours. In fact, Red Cross does scores of the jobs in your town that no one else seems to have time for. That's Red Cross. Help keep Red Cross ready.
Do you have a friend who got pregnant, who had the child, or had an abortion? Did you talk to her about it? Did you ask her how she felt about it? I'm Paul Michael Glazer. Most of the kids in this clinic have something in common. Unwanted pregnancy. They thought that they were ready to handle having a sex life, and then they found themselves in a situation most teenagers don't want the responsibility of. Parenthood. With all the kinds of birth control that are available today, nobody has to have an unwanted pregnancy. Nobody has to be a parent when they should enjoy being a kid. Look, there are a lot of things in life that we have no control over at all. Sex is not one of them. Make the most out of the experiences that you can make choices about. If you're gonna have sex, use birth control.
Make a life for yourself before you make another life. A message from the U.S. Public Health Service and your local family planning agency.
Headlining the news at this hour, President Carter visits civil rights leader Vernon Jordan at a Fort Wayne, Indiana hospital today, and he tells newsmen he knows of no motive for that shooting. 1,000 Cuban refugees are rioting at the Fort Chaffee, Arkansas Relocation Center. We're working on a live telephone report at this hour. Meanwhile, the flow of refugees into Miami is slowing down. Deep Throat star Linda Lovelace joins a feminist protest against that film. Coming up on the news channel, CNN's Bill Zimmerman reporting live from Los Angeles with a preview of the California primary. And at the sports desk, today's baseball highlights and Kemper Golf Open. Lou?
A few minutes ago, we had some microwave problems getting in a report from Mike Betcher in Key West, where he's looking into the Cuban refugee boat lift as it stands today. So we'll go back now, since we have things all under control. And here's Mike Betcher.
Annex, right after sunset, is the quietest it has been since the boat lift began 1 month ago. But military officials still estimate there are between 250 and 300 boats in Mariel Harbor. Now, 2 of those boats are reported to be larger boats, one perhaps a medium freighter that could hold up to 1,500 refugees. It is called the Red Diamond. And we received reports this evening that one of those reported freighters, may try to go to Costa Rica instead of coming to Key West to avoid having their ship confiscated and to avoid the fines. We will have further confirmation on that later this evening. For the last week and for the last month during this boat lift, most of the people arriving here have been young males. Some have been in prison, but most are young males who have no family here, who know no one. There's been a great debate what to do with these people, how they will affect the economy. Well, one colonel, Colonel Juan Montez of the Joint Contingency Task Force for the Caribbean, set up by President Carter to deal with the Russian presence in Cuba. Colonel Montez has an idea of how to deal with that. And Colonel, how would you deal with these young men who know no one here? What would you do with them?
Well, this is not only my idea, it's a suggestion that was made by other Cubans and Cuban Americans and Americans, and it's to get this Cuban force into the armed forces as it was done during the missile crisis in 1962, creating a Cuban unit. This will solve 3 problems. First, it will give an opportunity to these Cubans how to learn the laws rather quickly and to get used to our ways in the United States and also learn the language. Second, it will solve their economic problem immediately. And third, it will be a force in being in the event of an emergency or contingency in South America or Central America.
Some of these men have been in prison. Would they be receptive to joining an American Army unit?
I'm sure they will. I don't believe the majority have been in prison. If they have been in prison, it's for special crimes that exist in Cuba. Otherwise, they will not be. But I'm sure they will join the armed forces voluntarily.
Now, as we said earlier, you work with the Joint Contingency Task Force for the Caribbean. You're very familiar with the Russian presence in Cuba. Do you fear that many of the people arriving here may be Cuban agents? You're familiar with this area.
Well, that's a possibility. We haven't been able to detect or have an exact number of agents, but it's always that possibility. Perhaps 10 in 1,000 will be Cuban agents, but we don't know. We don't have a figure.
How would this affect the security of the area that you're in charge of or work with protecting?
I don't think we'll have any effect whatsoever. We have good security provided here by the marshals, the police, the Marines, and they're all doing a tremendous job here with security.
One final question, sir. You were the first Cuban to become an American officer in the Army. You're very familiar with the people coming here, why they're coming here. How do you feel about the whole boat lift?
Well, I believe that the majority of the people left Cuba for the human rights violations in Cuba, the economic conditions, and they found an opportunity to come to this great nation when President Carter allowed them with an open arms policy to come over here. I think this is a humanitarian effort, and I'm sure the Cuban people thanks always the United States for that.
Thank you, sir. Later this evening, if we have any breaking developments on the Cuban boat lift, if it restarts again, we will break in live. Mike Betcher, Cable News Network, Key West.
Thank you, Mike. On Tuesday, Ohio will join 8 other states in choosing presidential favorites. Sources say the economy is a big issue to the steel and automobile workers who comprise a large percentage of Ohio voters. CNN's Bob Berkowitz went to Cleveland to find out how workers there plan to vote.
There's only one way to describe the economy in this part of Ohio: dismal. Massive layoffs in the steel and auto industries are the rule of the day, and prospects for the future aren't good. Going into the final weekend before the Ohio primary, the news could not have been worse for President Carter. He campaigned here late last week, telling Ohio voters that the economy is on the rebound.
Our nation is strong. It's getting stronger. We face challenges now. We've faced more difficult challenges in the past. Our nation is united.
But the day after the president left the state, the word was that another 8,500 auto workers were being laid off. They'll be joining thousands of other Ohioans who recently went on the unemployment rolls. All this in the part of the state where 60% of Ohio's Democrats live. Well, despite all the plant closings and layoffs, the polls show Kennedy lagging behind Carter. A lot of the auto workers who drop by here for a beer say they're not thrilled with President Carter. That doesn't necessarily translate into support for Senator Kennedy.
I would say the economy is kind of shaky, but I wouldn't blame it on Carter because there's other presidents in there before that really did a job on us, like Nixon when he froze our wages. That's what really put us behind.
I'd vote for Carter before I'd vote for Kennedy.
What is that?
Well, Kennedy gets in, we're going to be in deeper trouble.
Why is that?
Well, right now, Kennedy is like he had that trouble before with that woman and all that.
I think Carter's got his stuff together. Kennedy, I don't think he can be trusted. There's too much power in the Kennedy family.
This survey is unscientific, but those who support Kennedy here view the senator as the only alternative they have for now.
Well, I don't know. I think Mr. Carter's a little inconsistent. He don't seem to follow his promises. He don't keep his promises. He breaks a lot of promises.
Hey, I had to go for Kennedy, man.
Why'd you vote for Kennedy?
Hey, I feel good. Hey, we done voted for all the rest of them. They ain't done nothing for the country. Hey, we got to have somebody represent our country.
Well, I would vote for Kennedy, but I like to vote for Carter. But Carter's too soft-hearted. The public going to chew him up.
The Kennedy people point out that the laid-off auto workers aren't hurting right now, that they're still getting 90% of their pay. Nevertheless, Edward Kennedy has made the worsening economy the focus of his campaign here. But the polls indicate that as of now, Ohio Democrats are apparently not ready to dump Jimmy Carter yet. Bob Berkowitz in Cleveland, Cable News Network.
Moments ago, we reported on an outbreak of violence and rioting at the Fort Chaffee Processing Center where Cuban refugees are being held in Arkansas. With more on that story now, Susan Oakes on the news line from Fort Smith and KFSA Radio. Susan, what do you know?
Well, the details on that escape are rather sketchy at this time. We do understand that Governor Clinton is en route to the base and that he has placed the Arkansas National Guard on alert at the base. We were notified at 7:21 this evening that by a spokesman from Sebastian County Sheriff's Department that there was an uprising. They called it an uprising at Fort Chaffee, and that all civilian personnel were ordered to stay away from the area.
Susan, earlier in the week, the residents near Fort Chaffee made certain threats if Cuban refugees were to break out. Do you have any idea if any of the residents in the area are involved in any of this?
We do know that there have been an awful lot of telephone calls, not only to our station, but to several others, and that the residents of the area are very, very alarmed at this time. However, we don't have any details as to any residents having, participated within this situation this afternoon.
An early report that we received indicated that a reporter covering the Fort Chaffee Center had been shot. Can you verify that?
No, sir, I cannot. I can verify that 3 military policemen have been injured and are hospitalized at this time. However, we don't have details as to the extent of their injuries, and we do not have any information as to a news person having been injured. Our news person, Karen Santos from KFSA, is out in the area of Fort Chaffee at this time, and I'm expecting a telephone call from her at any time with further details on the situation there.
Okay, Susan, we'll be back in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Susan Oakes, and as information becomes available, we will let you know. That's reported rioting and violence at the Fort Chaffee Processing Center for Cuban Refugees in Arkansas, where trouble has been brewing for most of the week. National Guard troops had been sent in earlier in the week, so they should be well manned there tonight. Continuing now with the news, the largest state holding a primary this Tuesday is California. Our Bill Zimmerman has been covering the California primary. He's with us now live in our studios in Los Angeles with a report. Bill?
This was to have been the big one, California, June 3rd, with 306 Democratic delegates to be awarded on a proportional basis, and on the Republican side, a winner-take-all contest with 168 delegates to go to the victor. But now with President Carter only a handful of delegates short of the number he needs, and Ronald Reagan apparently over the top and with no apparent remaining competition, the presidential contest in this state should be anticlimactic. Nevertheless, elections officials here expect nearly 7 million of the state's 10.5 million registered voters to go to the polls Tuesday, drawn there by 3 statewide pocketbook issues called Proposition 9, Proposition 10, and Proposition 11. Proposition 9 marks the return of Howard Jarvis, who captured the attention of the nation 2 years ago when he spearheaded the successful drive for Proposition 13, a massive property tax cut. This time, Jarvis wants to slash the state income tax, and CNN's Bryce Zabel has a report.
Californians will pay close to $7 billion into state coffers this year with their personal income taxes, unless Proposition 9 passes. It sets the tax rates at half of what they were in 1978, in effect a 50% tax cut. Howard Jarvis, the man behind Proposition 13, is also pushing this constitutional amendment, sometimes called JAWS 2. It's been attacked as welfare for the rich, but Jarvis says that's totally false.
For instance, to say a low-income man pays $200 income tax a year, and a high-income man pays $1,000. The high-income man pays 5 times as much as the low-income man. So Proposition 9 passes. Now the low-income man pays $100, and the high-income man pays $500. It's exactly what it is today.
Millions of senior citizens and millions of other people hardly pay any state income taxes. Most of the taxes they pay are to the federal government or are sales taxes.
And that's the problem with Proposition 9. It provides real tax relief if you have a very substantial income, but it provides little, if any, tax relief for just about everybody else.
Opponents also fear the uncertain state of the economy. They admit if inflation and consumer spending continue, the sales tax could make up part of the estimated $4.9 billion shortfall the first year. But a serious recession, they say, would mean a reduction in revenue, even without Proposition 9.
So it comes down to a question of whether we're going to have inflation or a recession. Or what is it? Well, nobody knows, and that's really the point. Anybody that says that they know exactly what the economy is going to do is either kidding themselves or kidding the public.
My reaction is, if they do have a recession, it's much better for the people to have the money than the bureaucrats.
But will there be money for the school system? It's a question that was first raised before the passage of Proposition 13, and it's being raised again. And what about firefighters, police, and other providers of essential services? Will California flame out for lack of money if Proposition 9 passes? Governor Jerry Brown says it might this time. Brown argues the days of budget surpluses are over, so there's no bailout option.
I think it is bad government, and it's unnecessary. I think the people have finally figured out what's going on with Mr. Jarvis.
If my style of telling the truth that's been proven for years, if that's going to lose an election, we're going to lose it.
The polls indicate that California voters have gone full circle on Proposition 9, initially favoring it and now opposing it by a wide margin. And even that could change, especially if voters buy the argument on Election Day that a vote for Proposition 9 is nothing more than a vote for a personal pay raise. Bryce Zabel, Cable News Network, Los Angeles.
The other two propositions that will draw voters to the polls here Tuesday concern rent control and a state surtax on oil company incomes. We'll have more on those in later reports. As to the presidential races, recent polls show President Carter and Senator Kennedy running virtually neck and neck on the Democratic side, with a large number of voters still undecided. With virtually no opposition left, Ronald Reagan is expected to run away with the Republican primary. I'm Bill Zimmerman, Cable News Network in Los Angeles.
Vernon Jordan's doctor says the civil rights leader may soon be out of intensive care. President Carter visited Jordan today as Jordan recovers from gunshot wounds he received on Thursday. The president told Jordan to follow his doctor's advice and then said he wanted the FBI and Fort Wayne police to work together to find Jordan's assailant. Mr. Jordan is in serious but stable condition at Parkview Memorial Hospital. He suffered 2 gunshot wounds, one nearly the size of a fist in his back, another superficial wound in the leg. Jordan's doctor, Jeffrey Toll, says the civil rights leader is progressing smoothly.
Reggie Jackson, the Yankee outfielder, was reportedly the target of a gunman today. It happened on a New York street corner. For more, we switch live to Mary Alice Williams in New York.
Reggie Jackson was out celebrating his game-winning home run, and by the end of the night, a Manhattan man had been charged with trying to kill him. Jackson and 25-year-old Angel Vieira apparently argued over a parking space. The argument ended, police say, with Vieira tossing a couple of bottles at Jackson's car, and Jackson and 2 fans chasing him down the street. Witnesses say Vieira returned and fired 3 gunshots at Jackson.
They had the driver of the car. There were like 3 cops with guns on him. They got Reggie up a little bit further by his car. They were trying to cool him down. But it was a circus. I've never seen so many cops get to a scene so quick. I think there were 2 on the corner that saw it happen originally. They radioed in, and the next thing you know, there were police all over the place. You know, every one of them had their guns out.
Shots missed Jackson, but hit an awning and a window nearby. Jackson has decided to press charges, and he did not play in today's game against the Toronto Blue Jays. Police today charged a Connecticut man with attempted murder. 29-year-old Fred Banks apparently opened fire on board an Amtrak passenger train between Boston and New York. The bullets hit a conductor, a security guard, and a woman passenger. The woman and the conductor are in critical condition tonight. The guard is stable. The shots rang out shortly after the conductor asked Banks for his ticket. New York City Mayor Edward Koch may soon address the Republican National Convention's Platform Committee, even though he's a Democrat. Koch has, in the New York Times, it's reported that Koch has accepted an invitation to appear before the panel officially. Koch's aide said the offer is under study. The mayor was once an enthusiastic supporter of President Carter, but recently Koch has made no secret of his unhappiness with the Carter administration's proposed cuts in aid to large cities. The 16th annual Salute to Israel parade marched up New York's Fifth Avenue today. The marchers celebrated the 32nd anniversary of Israel's independence and their own love for the Jewish homeland, as Joanne Lee reports.
A Salute to Israel parade, and thousands turned out for the march down Fifth Avenue. Marching bands, floats, and lots of smiling faces stretching for blocks. This was a great day for a parade to demonstrate solidarity and support for Israel.
The parade itself has no political meaning. It is just fun to the children that march in it, and it's our expression of support for the state of Israel. It's also the first time after the Jewish holidays that we can have a parade.
We love Israel. I'm waving my flag.
Flag waving was just about everywhere, spectators included.
Israel for me means everything. I lost my whole family in the Holocaust. My whole family, parents, sisters, the whole family, children, nothing is left. And Israel really means to me everything.
The parade was organized by the American Zionist Youth Foundation. It's been an annual event in New York since 1965, and many New Yorkers look forward to it as a very important event.
We're American Jews, so our interest lies with both the United States and America, and it's a very thrilling thing for us.
Joanne Lee in New York, Cable News Network.
That's it from New York. I'm Mary Alice Williams.
Coming up, CNN Sports with Fred Hickman. Stay with us.
Somewhere in these Chiricahua hills, no white man will ever know where, the Apaches buried Cochise, the greatest of their great chiefs. Geronimo faded into these hills, and it took 5,000 U.S. soldiers to bring him out. And now Time Life Books brings the great chiefs to life again as your introductory volume to a fast-writing series called The Old West. Hundreds of authentic pictures give you the real story. For the first time ever, you'll be able to see Geronimo's combat dagger and Colt 45. You'll look into the eyes of Sitting Bull, the man who destroyed Custer. Quanah Parker, the fierce Comanche whose mother was a captured farm girl, and all the great chiefs. Eyewitness accounts and rare photographs and art bring the Old West to life. You'll meet the gunfighters. Men like John Wesley Hardin, so mean he once shot a man just for snoring. The cowboys, blazed in glory by the greatest artists of the Old West. The pioneers, battling the savage elements and bloodthirsty war parties. The gamblers, the women of the West. They're all here in big, handsome books with the look and feel of hand-tooled saddle leather. We'll send you the great chiefs for a free 10-day examination. If you're not impressed, just return it within 10 days and pay nothing. If you decide to keep the great chiefs, you pay just $9.95 plus shipping and handling. Then approximately every other month, we'll send you another lively volume from the Old West Library, free for a 10-day examination. Keep only the volumes you want. You can cancel at any time. Here's how to order.
To order your subscription to the Old West books, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257. In Hawaii, call 536-6677. Each book for $9.95 will be sent for a 10-day approval, approximately every other month.
Here are the headlines to the minute. Governor Clinton of Arkansas is reported on his way to the Fort Chaffee Cuban Refugee Center, where rioting and violence is reported to have broken out, we have learned. The PLO group Al Fatah pledges to, in their words, liquidate the Zionist entity in the Middle East. President Carter visits Vernon, Jordan today. Officials there still are baffled by the sniper attack on the civil rights leader. And storms and tornadoes ripped central Illinois, injuring several people today. Still to come on the News Channel, a live report from New York on financial news, and the wealthy Hunt brothers speak out. Lou?
Lots of baseball today. CNN sportsman Fred Hickman is here to tell us about it.
Thank you, Lou. We did have a full Sunday schedule. Let's get right to the scoreboard and see where we stand right now. First, from the American League, it was the Toronto Blue Jays losing a big one to the New York Yankees, 11-7, the final from Yankee Stadium. Milwaukee got past Boston 8-5. California, Detroit, and Baltimore, Minnesota both fell subject to rain today. They've been postponed and rescheduled. In the American League West, we have Chicago beating Kansas City 6-1, and Seattle edging Cleveland 8-7. Oakland and Texas coming up a little bit later tonight. Over in the National League, the New York Mets lost a big one to Pittsburgh this afternoon, 13-3, the final score in that one. Berra with a grand slam homer. It was Chicago Cubs over Philadelphia 5-4. Montreal getting past St. Louis. Cardinals cannot win, 7-6 the final in 12 innings. Atlanta beat Los Angeles 9-5, and Houston lost to San Francisco 6-2. Cincinnati Reds beat San Diego 7-6. Well, that big red machine in Cincinnati has begun to warm up in the National League's Western Division. They moved into San Diego today where they edged the Padres, as I told you just a moment ago. Here's a look at some of the action. The San Diego Chicken warmed up to the occasion, expecting some big things to happen, and he got them. Here, Junior Kennedy doubles off the wall in left field. Ray Knight was aboard. Knight scooted around and scored the second Cincinnati run of the game. They led 2-0 at this point. Later, the Reds up 3-0. Dave Concepcion sends a soft liner into right field. Collins was on base here and proceeded to score, but Concepcion, trying to stretch the single into a double, was gunned down, and it was 4-0 Reds. Padres came back, trailing 4-2. Dave Winfield, a single off of Soto. Mumphrey comes home with the Padres' third tally of the game. But the man of the hour was John Bench. He ripped a homer here to left field, 8th inning, for his 20th RBI of the season. That's number 1,210 in his career. He's number 2 on the all-time list for catchers, and the Reds win it 7-6, the final score. In golf, John Mahaffey took today's final round of the $400,000 Kemper Open, fired a 2-under par 68 today with birdies on both the 17th and 18th holes, finished the tournament at 275. And on the LPGA Tour, it was Beth Daniel taking the LPGA New Rochelle tournament, her first win since the Patty Berg Classic last year. Daniel was the only player to break par. Her final score was 1 under 287. Joanne Washam and Nancy Lopez Melton tied for second at 1 over par with 289s. And that's Sports to the Minute. Now back to Renelda at the anchor desk.
I'm definitely not Renelda at the anchor desk. But I can tell you we are going to now switch live to the White House. We told you earlier that President Carter had visited Fort Wayne, Indiana, and was returning to the White House. Mark Walton is standing by now with a live report.
The president returned here to the White House by helicopter about 15 minutes ago, stopping only briefly to chat with reporters. He said that Vernon Jordan is doing well, is now able to have a few guests in his hospital room, and is expected to recover completely. A couple of hours ago out in Fort Wayne, the president had somewhat more of an elaborate news conference. The president would not divulge very much information about his chat with Jordan. He wouldn't say whether the men had discussed the shooting, for instance. He was asked several times by reporters whether he thinks there was a conspiracy, and he said he had no information to divulge, but the impression was left, with meetings with the FBI and local police, that Carter now knows a great deal more than before he went out today, and that he's very much up on the investigation. The president would not get involved in a discussion about possible connections between the Jordan shootings and the Miami riots, but obviously that was one of the considerations he had in mind when he went out to Fort Wayne. Black leaders are calling on the president to guarantee a thorough investigation and to guarantee that there will be no cover-up. And for Carter, not only black votes ride on such an investigation, but so do chances for avoiding another Miami. Mark Walton, Cable News, the White House.
And we'll be back after this word. Stay with us.